Hey everybody, today we're going on a journey into the world's swamps, where some of the most frightening creatures lurk hidden beneath the water's surface. Here are the top 15 scariest swamp creatures, each with its own eerie presence and haunting survival tactics. Let's start with number 15, the Lolong. Better known as an eye worm, the Lolong can be found in the tropical swamplands of West Africa. Usually, they'll infect people through a bite of a deer fly or a mango fly. Once inside you, they wander under your skin, feeding on fluids in your tissues. At night, they retreat into your lungs, and from time to time will even cross into your eyes, causing intense pain. And while the Lolong can be removed through either surgery or antiparasitic drugs, dealing with one is far from pleasant. Number 14, the mosquito. Now, while their sting may not be all that painful, mosquitoes are the most dangerous animal on the planet by a large margin. They're responsible for spreading about 17% of all infectious diseases. Getting bitten by one can be bad news, especially in areas without good medical infrastructure. So, if you plan to travel through any swamps and tropical areas, I'd suggest being certain of all your vaccines are up to date. Number 13, black flies. In North America, black flies are little more than a nuisance. Now, while these small pests will bite you and cause you to bleed, they're not known to spread any diseases. However, in Africa, Mexico, Central America, Brazil, Venezuela, and Yemen, they're known for being far more nefarious. That's because in these regions they can transmit roundworms that cause river blindness in humans. Oftentimes, infected people develop eye lesions, which can lead to visual impairment and permanent blindness. So, if you happen to be in a tropical region with black flies, I'd recommend using a generous amount of insect repellent. Number 12, red-bellied piranhas. If you travel down the Amazon River and its adjoining swamps, you'll encounter packs of predatory fish. They're known as red-bellied piranhas. They come in at lengths of up to 50 centimeters and are known for their extremely sharp set of teeth. Now, while they usually use them to chomp down on small prey such as worms, crustacean, and fish, when food is scarce, piranhas will at times gang up together to take down large prey in what's known as a feeding frenzy. It only takes a few minutes for them to completely eat up this individual, and while the victim is usually a capybara or egret, humans are also at risk. Number 11, Cassius. Now, while most crocodiles live deep inside swamps, the largest one that can be visited today is Cassius. Believed to have been born in 1903, in 2011 he entered the record books after being measured in at 5.48 meters long, making him the world's largest crocodile in captivity. Now, it's worth mentioning that despite being massive, he may have lost a few inches decades ago. At the time of his capture in 1984, he was notorious for fighting other crocodiles over territory and attacking boat engines, causing him to lose bits of his snout and tail. These missing body parts were not factored into his 2011 measurements and could have added another 15 to 25 centimeters to his length. Number 10, Levensenelia birdi. While this may be microscopic, they can cause a whole lot of pain. That's because they have the ability to turn other creatures into orange zombies. While they are thankfully far too small to infect humans, they can infect amphipods, which are a type of small crustacean commonly found in swamps. Now, most of the time these amphipods are pretty low-key. With the help of their dull skin, they can easily camouflage in the mud and grass of the marsh, helping them avoid being snatched up by predators such as birds and frogs. However, once this tiny flatworm-like parasite takes over the brain, they turn bright orange, and rather than take cover in grass, they lounge out in the open at low tide. What's interesting is that the parasite's choice of prey is no accident. According to David Johnson, who's a co-author of a study on the infected amphipods, it all has to do with parasite reproduction. You see, in order to reproduce, the Levensenelia birdi needs to get out of the gut of a bird. Now, to do that, it turns the amphipod into a suicidal neon sign that screams, "Eat me." Now, these lazy bright orange amphipods then become easy targets for predatory birds. Researchers have noticed that these strange parasites have been on the rise, and after conducting tests at a salt marsh in Massachusetts, they found that nutrient pollution from excess nitrogen is likely to blame. You see, the salt marsh where the scientists track these orange amphipods is home to a long-running experiment on nutrient pollution. Scientists have been applying nitrogen to patches of the marsh since 2004, with this being done to mimic the excess nitrogen that ends up in the waterways polluted by agricultural runoff. That excess nitrogen can cause algal blooms, and based on this study, also lead to a rise in parasite populations. In plots with extra nitrogen, the parasite population was 13 times the size of the population in control plots. Now the researchers say that this is evidence of what happens at the bottom of the food chain can affect species further up. And while this parasite doesn't infect humans, changes such as increased nitrogen could also increase the population of parasites that do. Number 9. Macrobdella mimicus. In 2019, a new species of leech was found in the swamps of southern Maryland. At first glance, the species sounds terrifying. After all, the blood-sucking olive green leech has 3 jaws and 59 teeth, making it more than able to feast on whatever crosses its path. Yet, despite being rather scary, there is a case to be made that it's much more helpful than harmful. You see, in the 1700s and 1800s, physicians used leeches to treat a wide range of ailments. The common belief was that by ridding a patient's body of bad blood, the parasites could cure headaches, fevers, and other conditions. Since most of the leeches used for bloodletting were imported from Europe, North America's leeches were mostly left alone. Macrobdella mimicus is one of those species, and incredibly, it's the first new leech species to be found in North America since 1975. The discovery process for this new species was pretty incredible too. Over a period of 4 years, Anna Phillips, who's the curator of the Smithsonian's Parasitic Worms Division, brought a team with her to well-known leech sites across the east coast of Canada and the United States. Wading into murky waters for days wearing shorts with bare legs and sandals, she would look for leeches under wood, grass, and trash in swampy, algae-covered ponds. The hope was to discover why leeches have such a broad geography, especially since they're not the most mobile of creatures. It was after collecting hundreds of samples of leeches that they found their answer, that at the very least, the Maryland leeches had developed separately as an entirely different species. Now, while the new species may be pretty cool, the million-dollar question is whether or not it's dangerous. For the most part, the answer is no. While leeches may suck blood, they're not known to be carriers of human diseases. However, if you remove one improperly, they can regurgitate blood back into your body, causing a minor infection. Similarly, if you allow a leech to feed on you until it's full, which takes about 30 to 45 minutes, its powerful blood thinners can cause you to bleed for longer than usual. Now therefore, while having one of these leeches on your leg is not a serious medical emergency, I still wouldn't recommend wading into a swamp without long pants on. Number 8. Gustave. Of all the creatures on this list, one of the most notorious is Gustave. Hailing from the African country of Burundi, Gustave is a male Nile crocodile that roams the Ruzizi River and the northern shores of Lake Tanganyika. Now, much of the knowledge we have of him is scant at best. He's believed to have been born about 69 years ago. He's believed to weigh over 910 kilograms and is believed to have brought down between 200 to 300 victims during his lifetime. Now, these numbers are hard to verify. After all, the documentation surrounding him is less than clear, and in many cases, it's not always certain whether or not Gustave is at fault. Importantly, it's also worth noting that he didn't get much international attention until the 1990s. However, in the early 2000s, he instantly became a celebrity of sorts. That's because Gustave starred on the show Capturing the Killer Croc. As part of the show, a group of scientists attempted to capture him over a period of 2 years. In order to get the job done, they created a 9-meter-long trap cage, and after locating him, soon got to work baiting the trap, installing hidden infrared cameras and rigging the bay with 3 giant snares. However, the whole thing ended up being quite a failure. While other crocodiles were caught in the snares, Gustave was not. Furthermore, after finally putting a goat in the trap and trying to capture him, the area was hit by a thunderstorm. As a result, the camera failed to operate. The following morning, the cage was found partially submerged and the goat was gone. Well, some believe that rising waters from the storm helped the goat escape. Others believe Gustave entered the cage, but the trap failed. However, the reality is that with no camera recording, nobody knows for sure. The other reality is that thanks to trouble due to an armed conflict in the region, the team had to return home, leaving Gustave to his own devices. Shortly after, National Geographic ran a report on Gustave and estimated that he could easily be more than 6.1 meters long, 910 kilograms in weight, and be over 60 years old, and allegedly still be growing. Yet since this show, interest in him has waned, and according to what is publicly available, he was last spotted in 2015. It is due to his 9-year disappearance from the public eye that many believe he may have simply passed away. Moving on to number 7, Willow the Wisp. While the will-o'-the-wisp is certainly a folk tale, what's crazy about it is there seems to be versions of the story across the globe. Now, the basic premise of it is simple. In essence, it's an atmospheric ghost light seen by travelers at night, with it being especially prevalent over bogs, swamps, and marshes. The idea is that it's a trickster spirit of sorts, enticing you to go away from the main path and mislead you into the swamp, usually to your own demise. Now, the Irish version of the tale features a sinful man named Drunk Jack. When his time is up and the devil comes to collect his soul, he tricks the devil into turning into a coin so he can pay for one last drink. When the devil obliges, Jack places him in his pocket next to a crucifix, preventing him from returning to his original form. In exchange for his freedom, the devil grants Jack 10 more years of life. When the term expires, the devil comes to collect his due. However, at this point, Jack tricks him again by making him climb a tree and then carving a cross underneath it, preventing him from climbing back down. In exchange for removing the cross, the devil forgives Jack's debt. However, when Jack's time came and he tried to enter heaven, he was denied, similarly due to his past tricks. Hell denied him as well. As a result, the devil instead allowed him to have a fire to use on Earth, where he wanders around and misleads travelers to this day. In Bangladesh, the story is a little bit different. There's a common belief that when a fisherman passes, they sometimes turn into a ghost light. These ghostly lights hover over marshes and can be either good or bad. While some try to help those on the water avoid dangers, others instead lead boaters to their demise. Similarly, the Japanese, Koreans, and Chinese have similar stories, although the lights are usually not associated with swamps and are instead associated with other locations. Those in South America have stories that differ quite a bit from those in Europe and Asia. Rather than being located in a swamp, these lights are instead caused by evil spirits or creatures. The idea in most stories is that they roam around and wreak havoc on the people they come across. So, while the story of the will-o'-the-wisp may change from geography to geography, it's pretty cool that many parts of its story seem to be universal. Number 6. The Nile crocodile. While there are 26 recognized species of crocodile, the Nile one is the most dangerous by a large margin. Found in 26 countries across Africa, its range goes as far north as Egypt and as far south as South Africa, as far east as Somalia, and as far west as Senegal, making it a truly continental animal. Now, generally speaking, these crocs come in at a length of about 5 meters and weigh about 225 kilograms, although they can grow to lengths of 6 meters and weigh up to 1,300 kilograms. For reference, that's about as heavy and just a little bit longer than a Honda Civic. It is an apex predator in its habitat. It generally takes down prey by ambush and can do this both on land and underwater. In fact, Nile crocodiles are able to dive for a few minutes at a time and can swim underwater for up to 30 minutes if threatened. And if fully inactive, they can hold their breath for up to 2 hours. While they are fastest underwater with their swim speeds at 30 to 35 kilometers an hour, they're also pretty quick on land for short distances. They can gallop at speeds of up to 14 kilometers an hour, which is fast enough to catch an out-of-shape human. Most of the time, these crocodiles will eat fish, although it will attack almost anything unfortunate enough to come across it. This includes zebras, small hippos, porcupines, birds, other crocodiles, and at times, even humans. Now, the main issue with this species is that much of its habitat is in close proximity to people, and this means that crocodile attacks are pretty common. While the numbers are sketchy, it's believed that they bring down up to 1,000 people per year, and they are likely responsible for injuring far more. This is a terrifying number, although experts seem to believe that the problem may be with humans rather than the crocodiles. After all, most biologists who have engaged in months or even years of field work with Nile crocodiles have found that with sufficient precautions, their own lives and the lives of their local guides were rarely, if ever, at risk. Rather, it's likely the poverty of the people that forces them to come in close contact with crocodiles in ways that aren't safe, thus causing these incidents. It's also worth mentioning that for many years, these formidable animals faced the threat of extinction. From the 1940s through to the 1960s, they were hunted nearly to extinction, primarily for their high-quality leather and meat, which, while relatively unappetizing, supposedly has curative properties. However, a new slate of national laws and international trade regulations helped bring back severely depleted crocodile numbers, and now they're considered to be a species of least concern. Number 5. Saltwater crocodiles. While Nile crocodiles are generally thought to be the most dangerous crocodile, saltwater crocs are a solid second. Located across southern and Southeast Asia and Oceania, these guys are beefy, at up to 7 meters in length and 1,000 kilograms. They're about as heavy and long as 2 Fiat 500s. This gives them the title of being the world's largest living crocodilian, making them a truly formidable creature. As their name suggests, they're usually found in saltwater, and while they're generally found in swamps, their swimming skills are so good they've often been found far off at sea. Well, in order to bring down a victim, they'll wait in silence just until the right moment, then they'll explode from the water with a thrash of their powerful tails, grab the victim with their massive jaws, and drag it into the water where they'll feast on it. The victim can be practically any animal that comes across its path, and from time to time even humans can be on the menu. Despite being incredibly powerful, it's worth mentioning that the saltwater croc was brought to the brink of extinction by humans. For years, it was often hunted for its meat, eggs, and skin, and in fact, unregulated hunting during the 20th century caused declines in population so severe the species was completely wiped out in certain areas. However, by the 1970s, regulations began to be passed to protect it, and it's now considered to be a species of least concern. It's also worth mentioning that saltwater crocodiles have been behind some of the most unfortunate human-related attacks. You see, in January of 1945, the British began an assault on the Japanese, with the goal of being to take Ramree Island. The story goes that after a tough battle, the 36th Indian Infantry Brigade outflanked the Japanese position, splitting the enemy group in two and isolating about 1,000 Japanese soldiers. While the British called on them to surrender, the Japanese refused, instead opting to wade through a 13-kilometer-long mangrove swamp to regroup with the other soldiers. As they ventured through the swamp, the troops came across a large colony of crocodiles. Stuck in thick mud and unable to fend them off, the Japanese soldiers quickly became lunch. Once all was said and done, just 520 of the initial 1,000 soldiers remained. And to this day, the event still holds the Guinness World Record for being the worst crocodile attack in human history. Now, it is worth mentioning that this crocodile attack may have not happened at all. Rather, some reports seem to suggest that the Japanese troops fell in battle, and that crocodiles only came to survey the scene later. However, to this day, nobody knows for sure. Number 4. The American alligator. There is little disagreement that the American alligator is one of the most feared swamp creatures in North America. Found across the southeastern United States and a small section of northeastern Mexico, it's actually one of only 2 alligator species left on the planet. The other is the significantly smaller Chinese alligator. Now, typically, the American alligator grows to sizes of 4.6 meters in length and about 500 kilograms in weight. Yet there are unverified reports of American alligators coming in at a whopping 5.8 meters and over 1,000 kilograms in weight, making these creatures absolutely massive. They are also apex predators in their habitat. In order to hunt down their dinner, they'll lurk in the water with just their eyes and nostrils above the surface. Once their chin detects vibrations in the water, they'll quickly lunge at their unsuspecting prey, and by all accounts, they'll eat practically anything. However, if you do get in their way, get ready for a world of pain. After all, their bite is equivalent to about 15 times the bite force of a human. Now, given their armored, lizard-like bodies, muscular tails, and powerful jaws, they certainly look like they belong to the era of dinosaurs more than they do to the era of Taylor Swift and TikTok. And making that assumption is correct. After all, it's believed they developed more than 150 million years ago, about 85 million years before the extinction of the dinosaurs. Besides looking decidedly dinosaur-like in nature, the American alligator somehow managed to escape annihilation. Yet that didn't mean it was smooth sailing. While alligator populations were virtually undisturbed for millions of years, in the 1800s, American colonists began to encroach on their habitat. Due to the danger they caused, these colonists began to hunt them en masse, and as they developed roads, towns, and cities, alligator populations began to dwindle. In 1967, things got so bad that they were placed on the endangered species list, and thanks to legislation such as the Endangered Species Act of 1973, work was done to revitalize alligator populations. After years of protection from hunting and the creation of programs meant to conserve the species, it was taken off the endangered species list in 1987, and today there are more than 1 million individuals in the wild. While this may seem like great news, it's also led to some tragic occurrences. You see, over the years, the wet and swampy Florida of the past has been turned into ponds, lakes, and canals. These new features attract alligators, and as a result, from 1948 through to 2015, there were 383 alligator attacks in Florida. As a result, state workers have had to routinely rid heavily populated areas of alligators. while education programs teaching the public about the dangers of these incredible animals are now commonplace in schools. Number 3. Lolong the crocodile. Saltwater crocodiles are nothing if not massive. Now, they're generally known to grow to about 4.5 meters in length and weigh over 450 kilograms. They're large enough to take down practically any prey that crosses it. Lolong is easily one of the most notorious. For a period of time, he terrorized the people of the Philippines, allegedly committing horrible acts as an apex predator towards local fishermen and schoolgirls. This made Lolong public enemy number 1, and in September of 2011, about 100 people got together to bring him down. Rather than simply dispose of him, for some reason or another, the villagers decided to capture him live. Well, doing this proved to be difficult. After all, at 6.1 meters in length and over 1,000 kilograms, he was far larger than your average croc. Unsurprisingly, this led to a lot of challenges. After all, even after Lolong was located and restrained, he managed to break out of the restraints twice. However, after a non-stop 3-week effort, Lolong was finally captured and brought to land, likely starved and dehydrated from the ordeal. After being captured, Lolong's stomach was promptly examined. However, due to the surprise, there was nothing of any suspicion inside. There were no remnants of the water buffaloes or humans he allegedly ate. This sparked rumors that an even larger crocodile was the true guilty culprit. However, despite calls from animal rights activists to release Lolong, the local government ultimately refused. Once the inspection was through, the decision was made to display Lolong as the centerpiece of an ecotourism park. In a statement, the local mayor declared that, quote, "We'll take care of this crocodile because this will boost our tourism and we know it can help in terms of the town's income and jobs to our villages and communities," end quote. And create income it did. In the first month, Lolong had already made the township about $220 a day. And given the fact that the average Filipino made roughly $280 per month at the time, this was a sizable sum. What's truly incredible about the story of Lolong is that at the time of his capture, he was the largest crocodile to ever to be put into captivity. However, the sad reality is he didn't hold the record for long. Just a year and a half after being put on display, he sadly passed away. According to doctors, his passing could be attributed to pneumonia and cardiac arrest, which was aggravated by a fungal infection. While this was unfortunate, the legacy of Lolong still lives on in the hearts and minds of the villagers. Thanks to his fame, his legacy also lives on at the Philippines National Museum. That's because in a somewhat controversial move, the museum decided to put his preserved skeleton on display. If you'd like to see it, it can still be visited to this day. Number 2. Megalania. While Australia may be beautiful, it's perhaps best known for being filled with dangerous species. Apparently, this was still the case in prehistoric times, as it was during this time period that a creature known as Megalania roamed the continent. It's believed that it first appeared on the planet at least 50,000 years ago, and they likely survived up to around 11,000 years ago. During this time, they were an absolute force to be reckoned with. Coming in at length of 8 meters and weighing over 2,300 kilograms, it was closely related to the Komodo dragon and weighed as much as 10 fully grown American alligators. This made it a terrifying predator, and it spent its days dining on large marsupials, flightless birds, and giant turtles, eating as much as 45 kilograms of meat per day in order to sustain itself. To overpower its prey, it would generally use its tongue to track its prey's movements, ambush it by running in short bursts, and then using its venomous bite to quickly put it out of its misery. It is worth mentioning that this venom was quite potent, similar to that of the Komodo dragon and the Nile monitor. It's believed that the venom would act as an anticoagulant. This would make it far harder for its prey's blood to clot, in turn leading to a rapid decrease in blood pressure and systemic shock. The Megalania also stands apart for its ability to live in a variety of habitats. While it spent a lot of time in marshlands, after all, the many Megalania remains have been found in nearby rivers or tributary beds, they are also believed to have lived in grasslands, forests, caves, and seemingly any environment where prey could be located. Yet perhaps what's craziest of all is the imposing figure did little to help it survive its greatest enemy, humans. Researchers believe that Megalania's body composition would have made it inefficient when attempting to outrun or outcompete early human settlers. This is especially true since, unlike the Megalania, humans had access to spears and boomerangs, allowing them to more easily hunt than any animal ever could. However, while humans may have outcompeted the Megalania, that doesn't mean that it wasn't seen as a threat. Rather, the species would have had quite the impact. Such an impact, in fact, that to this day some indigenous tribes have oral legends that likely feature this incredible creature. One of these legends also talks about the Megalania being able to swim for great distances. The story claims that one day a Megalania went into the ocean, fought with a great white shark, won, and then brought it back to shore and ate it for dinner. Of course, there's good reason to believe that over time this story may have been stretched out and amended. However, it was also the case that the story of Megalania may just be one of the oldest oral legends in human history. I'm sure you'd agree the fact that it continues to be told is pretty incredible. Number 1. The Loch Ness Monster. While most of the entries on this list are real, one that we aren't really all that sure about is the Loch Ness Monster. While most have written it off as being a fraud, the lore surrounding it is far older and perhaps far more intriguing than you might think. The first account of the Loch Ness Monster dates all the way back to 565 AD. In that year, a book entitled The Life of St. Columba documented a case of a man being dragged down to the bottom of the loch by an unknown monster. Things remained quiet for the next few centuries. However, in 1871, a sighting of the monster was reported. Another sighting in 1888 further stirred the pot, but in 1933, excitement was renewed once more when a slew of sightings were reported. Things really reached a head in 1934 when a surgeon and gynecologist by the name of Robert Kenneth Wilson took a famous picture of what he alleged was the monster. The extremely blurry image depicts what appears to be a dinosaur-like monster swimming through the water. Although it was upheld by many as genuine for about 60 years, scientists eventually proved that the picture was a hoax, and this supposed monster's head was just a 60 to 90 centimeter object pointing out of the water, with the object likely being a piece of driftwood. Unsurprisingly, this wasn't enough to convince many of the true believers, and over the years, several other sightings have been recorded. For example, in December of 1954, sonar readings taken by a fishing boat picked up a large object keeping pace with the vessel at a depth of 146 meters for a period of 800 meters. Yet later attempts to relocate this object proved inconclusive. Later, a 1960 film taken by aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale seemed to have shown the monster. However, later analysis showed that in all likelihood it was simply a boat in bad lighting. In subsequent years, everything from otters to algae blooms have been identified as the monster, yet nothing that is actually supernatural or monster-like has been found. It is worth noting that Loch Ness is not only the place where a large fictional monster is believed to live. One of the most famous counterparts to the Loch Ness monster is Nahuelito, allegedly located in Argentina's Nahuel Huapi Lake. The legend goes on that he's a long-necked swimming monster that can be found deep within the depths. According to reports, he's been spotted countless times from the banks of the city of San Carlos de Bariloche in Patagonia. The first to have seen Nahuelito are the native Tehuelche people, who for millennia reported spotting a huge creature swimming. In the 16th century, early Portuguese sailors claimed they spotted the monster there as well, and up until the 1920s, the iterations and stories surrounding it were constantly changing and evolving. However, in 1923, the story more or less firmed up. You see, during that year's carnival in the city, the Italian immigrant and timber merchant Don Primo Caparo built a model of Nahuelito out of wood and burlap. For a small fee, children could even ride on the monster's back, and soon images of the event were published in a local newspaper. Ever since, Bariloche has more or less become the spiritual home of this famed monster. Well, I bounce it back to you. You think the Loch Ness Monster or Nahuelito could be real? Or are they just elaborate hoaxes? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you to our channel members.